Hello, and welcome back to the Hydration Station, your oasis for tips, tools, and strategies to keep you refreshed and thriving in your professional and personal life. I'm your host, Daniela from Thirst for Knowledge, and today we're diving into something that has most of us sweating at one point or another: job hunting. Now, whether you're looking for a fresh start, a career shift, or just a new challenge, it can feel like you're wading through a desert of options, unsure of where to begin. Well, that's why I'm here to talk about this month's incredible free resource, So You Want a New Job. It's designed to help you navigate the entire job seeking process, from brainstorming your next move to acing that interview. So grab a drink and let's quench your thirst for knowledge. Where to start? All right. Let's start at the beginning. You need to be figuring out what you really want in a new job. So this guide emphasizes the importance of self-reflection. Think about your skills, your strengths, and what you truly value in a workplace. Is it flexibility? Is it growth opportunities? A strong company culture, maybe? Get clear on your goals before diving into applications. So when you want to start looking, if you know what you are good at already, what type of businesses you might want to work for, this is going to give you a good idea for the type of things that you want to look at. So it might not necessarily mean that you have to have certain qualifications, but if you've got the skills and you can back that up, that's always good. Also, don't let yourself be restrained by certain industries. So, for example, if you are a video editor and you really want to specifically work in film and television, now, I'm not saying that that won't happen. That is a good goal to work for. But whilst building up a portfolio and whilst working on freelance stuff, it would be a great idea to get a job under your belt in another industry. For example, something like marketing or social media has opportunities to video edit. So you can build up a bit of money in the bank and you can also build up your portfolio at the same time. I think also when you're thinking about where to start off, a pro tip would be write down some non-negotiables. So this will save you time and energy on roles that truly align with your aspirations. So when thinking about non-negotiables, for example, when I was looking for a job, a non-negotiable was I was not going to be traveling every single day, Monday to Friday, and driving for hours on end. So that is something that I immediately wrote down and was not about to negotiate on with anyone. Now, to some people, that would be absolutely fine and they would love it. To me, I just didn't want to do it anymore. So think about things that would make you unhappy and that you don't want to do. Once you've got a list down of that, then you should be good to go to start looking and start preparing your CV and cover letter. Right, next up, the dreaded paperwork. Now, don't let it intimidate you. This guide will give you actionable advice for tailoring your CV and crafting a compelling cover letter. The key is to make them stand out. Now, here's the golden rule: customize, customize, customize. So what I mean by that is every job is different, every industry is different. So you're going to need to have a different CV and cover letter that reflects the specific skills and experiences that make you perfect for each role. So this could be different, let's say, for if you were going for a design type of role. And if you're going for a design type of role, I would expect your CV to have a bit of design flair in it. So a little bit of colour, maybe some very simple lines and shapes. You may also have a personalised website and a portfolio to go along with that to back up your skills in design. Whereas if you were going for a role in software engineering, I would expect the absolute opposite. I would expect a CV that is pretty standard. It has got your skills on it. It's black and white, maybe with a teeny pop of colour if you want to stand out. You may also have a website as well to be a software engineer that shows your skills, but not as in-depth design-wise as you would for something like a graphic designer. Now, the guide is also going to remind us to quantify your achievements wherever possible. So, for example, when you're putting things down on your CV, try not to overgeneralize. So, let's say you worked in retail and you put down as one of your points, I ran a shop or I led a team. Try to think differently and reword it to things like, I managed a team of 10 individuals and increased productivity in that business by 25%. Numbers will speak louder than words in that case. Also, when thinking about actually creating and designing your CV, think about things like it needs to be on one single page. Now, this has been spoken about loads over the years. Recruitment websites and recruiters talk about this quite a lot, and it might have been something that you may have even heard of in school. I still think that this stands pretty true. If you're sending a CV to someone, they shouldn't have to be reading through 3+ pages. Now, the best way to do this is to think about what were the last jobs that you held within the last 5 to 10 years. So for some people, this might actually only be 1 or 2 jobs. For others, it may be a few. If it's quite a few, slim down to the key ones that are relevant to the role that you're going for, and then you can simply note that you did those other jobs so that you don't have a gap in time on your CV, and you can explain if needs be later down the line. But don't overthink it and add multiple jobs going over to multiple pages with lots of the same repeated skills. It's just going to waste your time. It's going to waste someone else's, because they'll look at it and more often than not think, that's too much and I'm not interested. So try to stick to that. Also, something that I see people get wrong quite a lot, and when I say wrong, maybe that's, the incorrect phrasing, but I see people quite often list their references. So they will actually list names, telephone numbers, email addresses on their actual CV. Now, I would say this is quite an old school method, especially now with things like GDPR laws. I would advise to definitely not put other people's details on your CV, and simply put references available on request at the bottom. It's simple. You have references, you can provide them, but you're not giving away somebody's data to multiple different businesses. The person who you put down as a reference may not be super happy with that, and also it makes it difficult for businesses having to get rid of that data as well. So think about things like that. Now, when thinking about layout and potential design, I would always suggest using tools like Canva. So Canva is a simple graphic design website. You can get a free account, you can get a paid account, and there are lots of templates. So if you're not very good at designing, you don't feel like you've got an artistic flair, you can use a pre-built template on there, fill in your personal details, download it, and there you go. You've got a great looking CV. If you have a bit more flair, you can create something wild and wonderful, and that will really make you stand out. But definitely check Canva out for designing your CVs. Now, when it comes to cover letters, you also need to make sure that your cover letters are specific to jobs, which sounds obvious, but let's say you are applying for a training manager role. Now, there will be a lot of similarities in being a training manager across lots of different businesses, but also, if you read the job descriptions carefully, there'll be a lot of differences as well. Maybe some specific software or tools that they want you to use. So having a one-size-fits-all cover letter is not going to cut it. Now, I would say the best way to deal with this is to have a rough template for the roles that you're applying for. So you have a cover letter that fills in the basics of your skills and that role. Then go through the job description for the specific role that you are going for. Pick out the skills and any specifics that they want for the job. If you want to double check this, you can also get tools like ChatGPT to run through those for you and also highlight those. But I wouldn't advise over relying on AI for job applications. Make sure you're actually looking into it yourself so you know. Only use AI as a backup to help you out. Then you can add in your experience and your skills that match with those that you've pulled out of the job role. If you do that, you're not actually having to write a brand new cover letter every single job. You've got a good template, but you are making sure that you're tailoring it to that specific one. Now, I briefly mentioned ChatGPT before. I just want to stress again, I do keep seeing that people quite often will post on things like LinkedIn saying, use these prompts to help ChatGPT create you a cover letter from scratch. Now, you could do that if you really wanted, but a lot of businesses now screen people's applications for the use of AI. And ultimately, is it worth it? You're never going to get your whole entire personality across if you're using AI for everything. And you may even forget which job you're applying for. You may not be aware of the skills and the asks and the wants that they want. So make sure you are reading stuff yourself. And if you are going to use AI, use it only as a supplement. Okay, now that your CV and cover letter are polished, it's time to hit the job boards. So this guide suggests a mix of strategies here. So don't just rely on big platforms like LinkedIn or Indeed. Think outside the box a little bit. So tap into your professional network. Who else do you know? Do you know anyone that works in the industry that you want to work in? They might not have a role straight away, but they might also be able to mentor you, so that might be really helpful. Maybe also attend industry events. Are there local things happening, or maybe further afield that you can go to and meet other people? Again, it might not directly lead to a job, but it's good to get other contacts. Make sure to also connect with recruiters. Try not to go for generic recruitment places and go for ones that specialize in your field. Now, recruitment officers and managers all work differently. No recruitment agent is created the same. Some will really work hard to get you a job. They will help you with interview prep. They will give you feedback. They will help you with your CV creating and give you feedback on that as well. Others will do the bare minimum. They may email you, once every 6 months, once every year, with roles that are not necessarily what you've asked for. So when thinking about recruitment agents, bear that in mind. Also bear in mind as well that you're going to need to look for jobs yourself, and it's going to be probably quite unlikely that you sign up with recruitment agents and then just have them find a job for you and walk into it. If you do find a good recruitment agent though, really do speak to them as much as you can, really do use them. Make sure that you listen to all of their feedback, because technically they work in recruitment, they should know. So make sure that you are branching afield. Make sure that on job boards like Indeed and maybe even LinkedIn, that all of your skills and your profiles, etc., are up to date. They have absolutely everything that people in the field you're wanting to work in would be looking for, and you're showing that you're using them and that you're using them professionally as well. So that's more to do with LinkedIn than something like Indeed, because Indeed, you're just going to have a profile, potentially with a picture, with your CV, with your contact details and your skills. LinkedIn, more like a mixture between a social media profile and an online CV. So try not to get involved in anything that I would say is personal, definitely not political, on LinkedIn. Keep it to professional things. Share things that you're interested in your industry. Share articles, speak to other people in the comments. Don't get sucked into arguments. That would be my advice. And then when you do want to apply for roles, if you apply for them through LinkedIn and you use the directly through LinkedIn like easy apply button, that will automatically send your CV, you may need to fill in a couple of pre-screening questions depending on the business and the job. But if that business then go back, look at your profile and look at things that you've commented on, you should be all gravy, and there's nothing in there that is going to affect you from getting a job. Side note, that also applies to your personal social media. Do not get wrapped up in thinking that people do not look others up on social media. It's more common than ever. So if you know that you have an inappropriate profile picture, even if your personal account is locked down, I would say it's a pretty good idea to change that profile picture. Anything that is public is a reflection of you, which sounds obvious, but a lot of people think, well, that's me personally, and I'm not like that professionally. But if you're looking for a new job, you want to make sure that people see the best of you, right? So don't ruin that by doing something stupid online. Also, keep an eye out for specific companies that align with your values when you're searching for roles. So make sure you're doing a little research up front. This can really help you focus on opportunities where you're likely to thrive. So don't forget to set up job alerts so you never miss a great opportunity for those particular places. You should do that anyway for the roles that you're wanting to apply for, but especially for the companies that you're trying to apply for as well. Okay, fast forward. You've landed an interview. Now what? Preparation is the key to confidence. So start by researching the company, its mission, values, recent projects, and even its competitors. The more you know, the more you'll stand out. So what I mean by this is try not to go for generic information. If someone asks you, oh, what have you heard about the company? What have you learned about the company? They're not wanting you to go, well, this company was set up in 1992 by Bob Jones. What they want to see is that you take an actual interest in what they're about. What have you found out? Oh, well, I recently saw that you did a charity event. It was really close to my heart because it was for the 𝗟𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗯𝗓 Society, and then go from there. That's a very, random example, but what they want is free flowing conversation, not I've seen a breakdown of when the company started, who it was started by, and that you make spanners, for example. They want to know more. You need to be able to stand out. So another good tip is you want to try and find out what the most common interview questions for that role are so you can start practicing. So you can do this in a few different ways. You can do this by either asking people that you know within that industry, if you are lucky enough to know the people that do that already. You can directly ask recruiters. So like I mentioned in the segment before, if you've got a really good recruiter and they're someone that have helped to hire for these type of roles before, or even people that I haven't mentioned already, talent acquisition managers or people that work in talent acquisition. So this role can be quite similar to recruitment, but it's usually specifically for that particular business. It's not an external recruiter, it's someone that recruits internally for that business. Sometimes these people will also help you and you can ask them questions depending on the situation. You'll get a gauge of what the person's like when you're talking to them. And finally, I've already given you a forewarning in the last segment, but you can ask ChatGPT as well for common questions that may come up for that role. Now, obviously asking something like AI might not always be accurate, but it's going to hopefully give you a pretty decent idea of what people are going to ask for that type of role. So once you've got a good idea, don't stop there. You need to start preparing your potential answers, not so that you're going to have a giant Word document that you're going to try and memorize word for word, but so that you can have an idea about what you want to talk about. You're wanting to have this free flowing conversation. Like I said before, you're not wanting to be robotic. If you try and memorize too much, just generally as a human, even outside of interviews, not very many people have got the knack of just memorizing big blocks of text. Also, if you're doing that, it makes it really difficult for someone to interview you because it could potentially be very stop-start. So this is a very generic question, but tell me about a time that you dealt with a difficult situation. Over to you. You then relay a very specific, memorized answer to them, which may put you in a little bit of trouble if they ask you further questions and you haven't prepared any follow-up. You've just prepared that block answer hoping it's going to be enough. And if it's not, you're going to stumble. then you're going to look like you're either too nervous, which, don't get me wrong, nerves in an interview are absolutely natural, and most people conducting interviews are aware that people are going to be nervous. So that's not something that you should beat yourself up about, but you also don't want to fumble. Start overthinking it and going, oh no, I've forgotten what I was going to say, or I don't have an answer prepared for that. What am I going to do? What you want to do is have whatever way works for you, whether you prep on post-it notes, whether you do prep on a doc, but you just make bullet points, whether you have cue cards, but just write down key things that you want to talk about. So, for example, I'm going for a learning and development manager role, and I want to make sure that I mention that I was fundamental and part of creating a learning management suite when I was in my current role or my previous role. That is just a bullet point for me. So I might just put something down like LMS. That's it. And that should be a trigger in my brain when I'm preparing that that's what I'm going to talk about. Because if you truly were part of that process in your current or previous role, hopefully you should be able to talk to people about that, and you wouldn't have to prepare or over prepare a giant answer to memorize because you've lived it. Now, some businesses may lean more towards something that is called the STAR method, and that is a very structured way to interview people. Now, if that is the case, hopefully they will tell you that in advance because you would need to prepare answers in that way. But I wouldn't try and overthink it, and I wouldn't try and prepare answers like that if you're not expected to answer in that way. Because like I've just said, if you're worth your salt and you know what you've done, you should be able to simply explain, well, this is the situation, this is what I did, this was the task, this was my action, etc. And you just naturally do that without having to think about it. So always make sure that you have some notes on your key subjects and accomplishments. Always make sure to avoid writing those full docs, like I've just said, and please don't try to memorize it all. If you do it in this way, you should hopefully be able to tell a clear and impactful story about your skills and what you've done. Also, final thoughts on preparing for interviews. As important as it is for you to prepare questions that you might be asked and what your answers are going to be, you shouldn't forget to prep a few thoughtful questions for your interviewer. So this shows genuine interest in the role and in the business, but it also helps to determine if the role and business is right for you. So don't forget, you're also sussing out whether this is really where you want to work and the people that you want to work with. So a really good one that I find is worthwhile asking is, if you ask the interviewer or interviewers, depends how many people are interviewing you, what their favourite thing about the business is. Because what I found is if you ask them something like, well, explain to me what the culture's like here, 9 times out of 10 they're going to tell you that the culture is amazing. Everything's great here, nothing ever goes wrong, everyone's really hunky-dory 24/7. Now realistically, we know that that's not always going to be true. People and businesses peak and trough. So what you really want to know is, well, what's your favourite thing about working here? Or what's your favourite thing about the role that you do? If it's a similar role or a similar department, that's going to give you a much more accurate depiction of what is actually going on in that business. Also, you will hopefully be able to remember all the conversations that you've had in the interview prior. So a good example, an interview that I did a few months ago was for a learning and development role. Now, when I was talking to the interviewer, they were describing what tools they currently use to content create and the types of content that they already had. They said the reason that they were looking for a new person to join the team was because the content that they'd got was not really fit for purpose. People weren't learning very much from it. So they needed someone with some fresh ideas, someone who knew how to actually create content, etc. Now, I said at the end of the interview, well, tell me about one of your biggest achievements since you've worked here. Like, what's something that you're really proud of? And that person replied that they had created all of the content They were very proud of it, and it's been nothing but successful, and the pass rates and the knowledge retention and application of skills after that content had been run through by someone was through the roof. So for me, that's a huge red flag. We'd already discussed this earlier on in the interview, that they needed someone to come in and refresh that. And then flash forward, when I ask them the question back, they tell me a completely different story. So for me, that's something that I noted down as a red flag. One part of that is untrue. Whether it's the initial part about the content, maybe the content is better than they first described, or the second half where everything's hunky-dory, because it didn't seem that way at the beginning. So that's just a very loose idea of the types of things that I would be picking up for in interviews and when I'm going to ask questions at the end. You should be able to take control of the interview rather than it just being you're asked a question, you answer back, end. You're asked a question, you answer back, end. Needs to be free flowing. You need to take control. You need to talk about yourself and what you can do. And at the end, they need to be able to back that up as a business and explain to you why you should want the job. And if they can't do that and you've not asked them the right questions, then you might struggle. Finally, let's talk about the big day. This guide shares basic tips for managing nerves and making a great impression. So first, dress appropriately, even if you're attending over video. So many people feel like it's fine to sit in jogging bottoms in an interview if they're over video. Now, it may sound stupid, but sitting in jogging bottoms is already a mindset that you kind of don't care, or you're kind of being overly comfy because you're at home. So get dressed as if you were going out of the house and you're going to attend the interview in person. Make sure that you look presentable and you are professional. When you are in person as well, obviously when in doubt, if you're not too sure what this business may dress like, it's better to be slightly overdressed than underdressed. So rather than thinking, oh, it's fine, I'll just turn up to the interview in jeans, if you have some decent trousers, put decent trousers on instead, or whatever is suitable for you. Make sure as well to arrive early, not too early though. 10 to 15 minutes is the sweet spot. And remember, your body language speaks volumes. So sit up straight, make sure to make eye contact with people, and don't forget to smile. Sounds pretty obvious, and it also sounds super cheesy, but there's nothing worse than trying to interview someone from the opposite side when they are just looking at the floor and they are struggling to actually speak and they're not engaging with people. That's a difficult time, and that's going to give a negative impression as well. Most people are not going to work with someone that isn't a little bit sociable and that just wants to look at the floor and be really quiet. So I'm not saying that you need to be overly loud. You don't need to be in everyone's faces, but you do need to have just really basic skills for looking at people, generally smiling, making sure that you're doing that eye contact. So a little enthusiasm does go a long way. Also, most importantly, just be yourself. Interviews are a two-way street. You're evaluating the company just as much as they're evaluating you. So make sure to just act yourself. Like I mentioned before, don't over-memorize things. Don't be robotic. Just behave like you would in your current role or your previous role. Just be yourself. And so long as you do that, that will come across to the people. And more often than not, they'll want to hire you because they're hiring you on your personality and who you are, more than sometimes the answers that you give, depending on the role that you're going for. And there you have it, a sneak peek into the job seeking playbook from our latest free resource, So You Want a New Job. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, this guide has you covered every step of the way. From preparing your CV and cover letter to searching for roles, prepping for interviews and nailing them. The best part, it's free. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the job hunt, I highly recommend checking it out. It's packed with practical, actionable tips to help you land the role you deserve. That's it for today's episode of the Hydration Station. I hope this gave you the boost you needed to tackle your job search with confidence. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone in your circle who's on the hunt for their next adventure. Stay hydrated, stay motivated, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye!